Welcome to a true horror story that shook America. Today, we dive into an unbelievable tragedy that unfolded on the eve of Halloween. Patricia Ward, a respected professor, was brutally killed by her own son and dragged to the sidewalk of a small town in Long Island. But what makes this story even more chilling is that Patricia's body was mistaken for a Halloween decoration. For hours, residents thought it was nothing more than a bold holiday prank. The horrifying truth only came to light when the police arrived at the scene. Patricia Ward pulled the curtain aside, letting the last light of the day filter into the room. Outside, the autumn air was alive. Golden leaves swirled beneath cold gusts of wind, and the cheerful laughter of children dressed as witches and monsters brought the neighborhood to life. But inside Patricia's apartment, an unsettling silence lingered. Derrick, her son, sat motionless in the chair, his eyes fixed on the blank television screen. He hadn't spoken all day. The only movements he made were an occasional snap of his fingers or a brief, eerie smile, as if savoring some private, cryptic joke. Patricia looked at her son, her heart weighed down by a mix of love and fear. The cheerful boy who once looked forward to Halloween with excitement had vanished. In his place was a stranger, lost deep in mental shadows, distant and frightening. "Should I make lasagna for you?" Patricia asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "I remember it's your favorite." Derrick didn't respond. He just smirked. "It doesn't matter anymore," he muttered, his eyes still glued to the void in front of him. "It'll all end soon." A chill ran down Patricia's spine. Like an unseen hand had grazed the back of her neck. She'd heard similar words before, but tonight they felt heavier, ominous. Derrick wasn't just talking to himself, he was hinting at something imminent. The thought of calling the doctor or even the police briefly crossed her mind. But she quickly dismissed it. How could she abandon her son? How could she treat him like a stranger when she had brought him into this world? She had promised herself never to do that, no matter how unbearable the nightmare in their apartment became. Patricia walked over to the window, gazing outside. The kids were still running around, bags of candy swinging in their hands. Their laughter echoed through the street, accompanied by the warm glow of porch lights. For a fleeting moment, she was pulled back to the past, when Derrick was a joyful child, dressed as a superhero, racing through the neighborhood and giggling under the lights. But that boy was gone now. The sound of the chair scraping against the floor pulled Patricia back to the present. She turned to see Derrick standing up, moving toward the door with slow, heavy steps. He offered no explanation, not even a glance back. He opened the door and disappeared into the darkness beyond. The closing door echoed through the room like a warning. A cold breeze slipped in through the gap, carrying with it the rustling sound of dry leaves. Patricia stood still in the dim room, feeling the pounding of her heart in her chest. Something was coming. She could feel it. It lurked somewhere out there, hidden in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. Halloween had just begun, and with it, a tragedy was stirring, ready to sweep everything away like a relentless storm. Patricia's apartment fell into silence as Derrick stepped outside. The Halloween lights illuminated the street, casting eerie shadows of fake ghosts and witches roaming about, while Derrick's figure melted into the darkness, disappearing as if he had never been there. Outside, no one paid attention to Derrick. The chatter of children, the rattle of candy dropping into bags, and the playful screams echoed down the street. But Derrick noticed none of it. Something was guiding him, a voice, an invisible force, pulling him deeper into the maze of his delusions. In Derrick's mind, everything began to blur and lose shape. He could hear whispers, promising to free him and his mother from this reality. Each step he took felt like it brought him closer to a dark purpose that even he couldn't fully grasp. He saw the streetlights flicker, but all he heard was the distorted laughter of someone from his past, blending with the sound of his own voice. He stopped at the apartment door, gripping the handle as if it marked the boundary between reality and illusion. Slowly, he stepped back inside, clutching something hidden in his coat pocket, a shiny kitchen knife. In the living room, Patricia was still debating whether to call someone for help, but before she could act, Derrick entered, his eyes vacant and unrecognizable, as if the son she once knew had been entirely consumed. He said nothing, just stood there with the knife glinting in his hand. Patricia immediately sensed that things had spiraled beyond her control. She slowly stood up, holding out her hand, her voice calm but trembling. "Derrick, sweetheart, put the knife down, okay? Everything's going to be fine." Derrick stared at her, his lips quivering, as if battling some inner force. But the darkness won. In an instant, he lunged toward her, the blade flashing under the light. The sound of chaos filled the room, like the crash of a violent storm. A scream tried to escape but was smothered, followed by a chilling silence. Derrick stood motionless, staring down at Patricia's lifeless body sprawled across the floor. Blood spread quickly, soaking into the carpet, staining it deep red. He staggered back, but there was no regret, only relief. It felt as though he had completed a mission, one dictated by the voice in his mind. "She's free now," he whispered to himself, kneeling down to drag Patricia's body out into the hallway. Outside, Halloween night continued undisturbed. Derrick hauled his mother's lifeless body to the sidewalk, his face expressionless, as if he were setting down a piece of holiday decor. Passersby glanced at him, some even chuckling. "Wow, that prop looks so real," someone exclaimed. And a group of children erupted in laughter. No one realized it was an actual corpse. Derrick stood there for a moment, admiring his work under the streetlights. The darkness within him had settled, leaving behind an eerie sense of peace. Without a word, he turned and slipped into the shadows, leaving Patricia's body lying on the sidewalk, a grotesque decoration blending seamlessly into the seemingly harmless Halloween night. Halloween music echoed through the neighborhood, blending with the hurried footsteps and laughter of children eagerly collecting candy. On the sidewalk, under the flickering streetlights, Patricia Ward's lifeless body lay still, her pale skin slowly drying as blood congealed. To the people passing by, it appeared to be nothing more than a particularly convincing Halloween decoration, just another bold, harmless joke, perfectly fitting the festive spirit of the night. A man stopped, crouching to examine the body. "Looks way too real," he muttered, pulling out his phone to snap a photo. Kids walking by giggled. "This has got to be the best prank of the year." A little girl in a mermaid costume squealed with delight. Patricia's body remained on the cold sidewalk for hours, illuminated by the pale glow of the streetlights. Dozens of passers-by took no notice. Some even paused to admire the decoration, snapping pictures and uploading them to social media with humorous captions. No one realized they were standing in the presence of real death, masked by the carefree atmosphere of the celebration. As the night wore on, a group of slightly intoxicated young adults stumbled upon Patricia's body. One of them, a guy wearing a black hoodie, bent down and poked at her wrist. The cold, clammy texture beneath his fingers made him freeze. His smile faded. Guys, I think this is real," he stammered, stepping back in alarm, eyes wide with fear. The others laughed, brushing it off as a drunken joke. "Man, you've had way too much to drink," a girl in the group teased, giving him a playful shove. Their laughter echoed down the street, scattering dry leaves in the chilly night air. But unease had begun to creep in, gnawing at the edges of their minds, though none of them wanted to admit it. One of them, braving the growing tension, stepped closer and crouched down. The streetlight revealed Patricia's lifeless face, dried blood caked around her neck and shoulders, her vacant eyes staring blankly at the night sky. The laughter abruptly stopped. One of them gasped, stumbling backward, paralyzed by fear. The police were called, and the festive atmosphere quickly dissolved into chaos. Sirens blared, cutting through the night, and parents rushed to drag their children home. A crowd gathered around the scene, their expressions shifting from curiosity to horror as they realized the grim truth. This was no innocent Halloween prank. When Patricia's body was taken away, a wave of guilt swept over the community. The photos had already spread across social media, and conversations about how a real tragedy had been so carelessly overlooked began to circulate. The laughter that had filled the air earlier in the night was now replaced by hushed whispers about Patricia and the chilling reality of her death. Derrick wandered through the darkness, his mud-caked shoes dragging across the cold sidewalks of Long Island. The damp scent of decaying leaves hung in the air, and each step echoed hollowly into the night. He had no idea how far he'd walked, but in his mind, everything felt distorted, whispers intertwined with warped laughter, urging him to keep moving forward. A strange sense of relief washed over Derrick after he had dragged his mother's body onto the street. There was no more fear or confusion, only an eerie peace. as if he had completed a ritual demanded by the voice inside his head. She's free now, he told himself, but just as quickly, another whisper crept in, dragging him deeper into the abyss of his delusions. He stood still in the middle of the street, cold wind biting at his pale face. Twisted memories flooded his mind, pieces coming together in fragments: Patricia's disappointed gaze, the shattered arguments, and the suffocating silence that lingered between them in her final days. The darkness inside him hadn't left. It clung to his thoughts like a shadow that refused to fade. The police found Derrick hours later, curled beneath a large oak tree near the park. He didn't resist or attempt to flee. When they handcuffed him and led him to the patrol car, his eyes remained vacant, as if his mind had wandered far from his body, leaving behind nothing more than an empty shell. "I did the right thing, didn't I?" Derrick asked, staring into the void ahead. "She's free now." The officers didn't respond. They only looked at him the way one might regard someone emerging from an endless nightmare. At the police station, Derrick was interrogated in a cold room under the dim glow of a yellowed ceiling light. The story he told made the detectives shudder. Derrick wasn't just convinced that he had freed his mother. He truly believed that something from the other side was after them. He was certain that if he hadn't acted, both he and Patricia would have been consumed by darkness forever. When the detectives asked how he felt after killing his mother, Derrick merely shrugged. "I don't even know what's real anymore," he muttered, his voice trailing off. "But she's still here, right beside me." And then, something strange happened. Derrick turned his head slightly, his gaze landing on an empty corner of the room. And he smiled, a gentle, tender smile, as if he were looking directly at Patricia. The detectives exchanged uneasy glances, a chill running down their spines despite the room's lifeless walls. The darkness hadn't left. It had found a new home, in Derrick's mind and in the memories of those who had witnessed the tragedy. What they didn't realize, however, was that the nightmare was far from over. It had only just begun. The sky over Long Island remained heavy and overcast, as if the darkness of Halloween still lingered in the air. Though the decorations had been taken down, an eerie chill clung to the neighborhood. The residents tried to return to their daily routines, but an invisible scar had etched itself into their minds. Those who had passed by Patricia's body on the sidewalk could not shake the haunting memory. They recalled the vacant look in her eyes, the unsettling smile frozen on her stiff face, and how everyone had laughed without realizing something was terribly wrong. Night after night, they woke from nightmares, feeling as if someone was staring at them from within the shadows. The guilt weighed heavily on each of them, like a ghost that refused to leave. Over time, the story began to evolve as those who witnessed the tragedy retold it, each adding new details. Some swore they had seen Patricia's shadow standing by their windows, smiling at them in the dead of night. Others claimed that every Halloween, her lifeless eyes appeared in dark corners, watching them from the depths of their memories. The haunting spread through the town. Whispered from one neighbor to another, Patricia's spirit had not found peace. Meanwhile, Derrick remained confined to a psychiatric hospital, where time seemed to dissolve. In his mind, his mother was still by his side, whispering comforting words as she once did when he was a child. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her standing under the streetlight, her blood-dried skin gleaming in the dim glow. "Everything's okay now. She's free," Derrick repeated to himself, but deep down, he knew the darkness hadn't released him. In the neighborhood, the rumors of Patricia's ghost continued to spread. Each year, on the night before Halloween, people claimed to hear soft footsteps along the sidewalk where her body had once lain. Some even reported seeing a figure standing under the yellow streetlight, a motionless silhouette that neither spoke nor moved, only stared. And whenever someone dared to approach, the figure vanished into thin air, leaving behind a chill that ran down their spine. The story came to a chilling crescendo with the arrival of a new family in the neighborhood. The following Halloween, their young child was playing on the sidewalk when they spotted a strange woman standing beneath the streetlight. "Hi there," the child called out, waving enthusiastically, but the woman didn't respond. Curious, the child ran toward the streetlight. As they neared, the woman disappeared, leaving only a cold gust of wind sweeping through the quiet street. The darkness never truly left. It merely hid within the cracks of ordinary life, waiting for the next Halloween to resurface, a grim reminder that not everything is a harmless joke. Patricia's ghost would never leave. It had found a permanent place in the hearts and minds of those who turned away from her in her final moments. The case of Patricia Ward is not just a family tragedy but a stark reminder of human indifference amidst the festive spirit. It forces us to ask, how many times have we overlooked signs of distress because we were too caught up in our daily lives? And as Halloween, a holiday meant to celebrate playful scares, numb our ability to recognize real-life tragedies? Let's reflect on this story and remember, not every mannequin is harmless. And sometimes, what we dismiss as fake can be far more terrifying than reality. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more real and chilling horror stories. Have you heard about this case before? Drop a comment and share your thoughts.